great value comes great vulnerability. Up next, we have a presentation on standards to access healthcare security and privacy frameworks. To guide us through, let's welcome Dr. Sundar Gaur, Scientist F at CDAC. Over to you, Dr. Gaur.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sit down. Yeah. First of all, thank you to Mr. Vinayak and Mr. Arvind who invited me here to speak. And interestingly, it comes at exactly the time when we were called upon by Ministry of Health to work on this specific area. So apart from working at CDAC in health informatics for the last 23 years, I also head the National Resource Center for EHR Standards, which is a center of excellence of Ministry of Health. And anything related to standard when it comes to in healthcare, basically my division looks at it. We are working closely with Ministry of Health, e-Health division, as well as National Health Authority, almost all regulatory bodies like IRDA, institutions, etc. And we do a series of things. So here, I'm going to just talk about the security and privacy standards and not the whole healthcare standard, although we look after all of that. So we know that healthcare security is pretty interesting. Most of domain that you pick, the data in that domain are basically privy of one or two parties. There is a subject, there is a provider, and sometimes there is a regulatory body that looks at it. Healthcare data is at another extreme. Every party in the system produces a data or consumes the data produced by other party. And that's why security in healthcare is another challenge. Also, since it has such sensitive information related to a person, that you have a privacy also built into it. It's not that if my bank account statement is to get exposed, maybe people will know how much pani puri I eat and how much lunch I get where, but my health data, if it gets exposed, that may create a lot of issues. So this is one challenge of it. But healthcare data at the another level poses a separate challenge as well, and that is the challenge of variety. Healthcare data is just humongously varied. There is different format, there is different types, there is different sizes, there is different level of sensitivities. There's also claims about ownerships and responsibilities and things like that. And in that scenario, we have to have appropriate not only preventive measures related to confidentiality, integrity, but also at the same time ensure availability. Because healthcare of individual is linked with healthcare of the community, and healthcare of community is linked with healthcare of the nation. So we need certain amount of rollback on our talk of privacy and security to allow certain amount of data to be available for research, for regulatory purpose, etc. And these are the challenges in which we are operating. Other than that, just October 24 report published by HIPAA in US, you can see the amount of cyber attacks that healthcare systems go through. And these are monthly data. I don't know for what reason in July there was such a spike, but there was. And these are usually hacking related to IT incidents. So very less number of people are trying to run away with your portfolio that you carry in hand. It's actually the IT systems usually maintained by you on a phone maybe, or your desktops or your laptops, or it is the IT system somewhere along the line which has this problem. If you look at the recent incidents, recently insurer got hacked. Petabytes of data became available on dark web. So these are the challenges. This at the bottom, I don't know if you can see it, but certain report of 2023, just last year, has cited 15.92 lakhs incidents of cyber attack on overall, not only health. And I'm sure that a sizable number of it is attacking health systems also. So in that, if you are to look at it, the healthcare data security will require us to look at 6 aspects of it. We need to bring in accountability, we need to build trust, we need to have data integrity, we need to secure our data, we need to control the access, and we need to also follow the best practices in the scope that wherever we are. If it is a clinician, there has to be a best practice for the clinician to ensure data at their level. But if it's a cloud, then there has to be a best practice for cloud operators to also ensure that healthcare data is secure. And these are some of the standards. So I'm not writing the whole name for it, but there are ISO standards and there are already techniques and mechanisms for each of these available. It is not that we are helpless. It's not that we have to do everything de novo. It's not that we don't know exactly what to do. There are a lot of materials already out there. There is issue about awareness, yes. There is issue about expertise in it, obviously, and there is issue about its implementation. Because unless and until all these three things also come together, it's not going to roll out. Now, shifting from security to privacy, whereas security is related to ensuring that your data remains with you or the fiduciary responsible people, but it's about privacy as well. What about the data contained in it? Who all have access to it? Say in a hospital setting, you truly don't know who all can look at your file. Similarly, for a health record system, we want to be assured, we want to be very sure as to who are the people who have access to this record system. And at one point, when we were developing one of the systems, there was a very interesting challenge. We were looking at something called an access control system called role-based access control. Something between computers. I'm an administrator, you're a standard user, you're a power user kind of thing. All of who are administrator, they have exactly the same privilege. All of who are standard have exactly the same privilege. Can it apply in a hospital? If I say you are a doctor, does it give you a super user power to access anybody's health record? And the answer is no. So role-based access controls start failing at these kind of scenarios, where just because I am a radio technician and therefore my role-based access control in the HMIS was technician, does it allow me to look at anybody's record now? And therein lies the problem. So most of the standard, and therefore the EHR standards for India 2013 and 2016 talk about a set they call protected health information. And there's a series of items that were listed down saying these are protected and they should not be shared unless and until the access is absolutely must. And they talked about the name, the geography, the social security number, but otherwise you can talk about the Aadhaar number, etc. Account numbers, contact details, medical record number, reports, etc. All of these are essentially PHI. And then comes the EHR, which is actually PHI plus a lot more information related to a patient and the care provided. And you have that much bigger challenge into it. But the standards that are available, they provide some kind of guidelines, some kind of ability for us to manage those health records. Now, obviously, if we are to ensure that there is protection of privacy to a particular level, there are 4 elements to it that must come together. One of them, there has to be a policy of access control, a policy of who uses what. Even if you're a doctor, unless and until you're a duty doctor and the patient is exactly in your ward, in your care, you don't get to see the record. It's a matter of policy. Once you have a policy, then what you come as is technology. How do you enforce these policies in terms of technology so that there is a mechanism to stop people from checking these things? So just because I'm a doctor, I log in the morning, I get to see the patients in the evening set, does not work. The technology has to take care of implementing that policy. Obviously, the operation side of it, because there's a lot of access on the operation side related to patient health care and records, etc. And we need to look at that as well. And ultimately the people, we have to make people aware. It's like, don't leave your passwords onto your monitors, right? Or the RBI messages that we keep getting, do not share your OTP with anyone or something like that. But people have to be trained. We think that everybody knows it, okay? But I'm sure if you look at all the servers that get hacked, it usually begins with one person who essentially kept a password as password or blank or something which was so easy to guess that it took them a couple of seconds to crack into one user's system. And once they crack that, that becomes the surrogate. From there, the rest of the systems start getting hacked. And they are very good at kind of covering their tracks. So by the time, because if you look at it, recently when one insurer got hacked, it was not a matter of just accessing certain records. The news article that came around, they talked about petabytes of data was taken out of that institution. It cannot have happened in one day. It could not, I'm sure that if network administrators of particular day saw that a humongous amount of data is getting transferred on an outward network, they would have caught it. It happened over a long period of time with the small megabytes of data getting out of your system. And that means that those hackers were inside your system for that many days, for that many months most probably. So all of these need to come together, and what happens is we think that security is sometimes an individual issue, or if we are working in an organization, we think security is something that network operators see. Security is something that my IT department is supposed to take care of. It is not. It is essentially all of these four things coming together. So some of the frameworks that are already available, and most of the people working in health domain already know about this, that there is GDPR from Europe, which gives a huge amount of regulatory guidelines related to what happens to patient data, and it's quite stringent in that matter. HIPAA has been long around in US, and all the healthcare systems which are US centric or have been developed in US do have to implement and have to support HIPAA. Then there is, instead of California, a special California Consumer Privacy Act. Singapore has its own. High Trust is another one. Then there is FedRAMP, and so on and so forth. And there are two specific ISO standards, the ISO 27001 and ISO 27018, which is a subset of ISO 27000 group of standards. This is a catch-all, cover-all standard. It basically is into everything. It is generic at the beginning, but is very specific at it goes into the substandard part of it. And its implementation is a humongous challenge. It's not simple. So from the technology side, so one is the standard part. What about the technology? Are there technologies available which will help us cover these standards, or will they help us do the privacy that all we are talking about? So we were, in one of my project, in one of my teams, we were working with a couple of hospitals and research institutions in Netherlands, and we started with these questions. If data analysis is our goal, ultimately, whether human is doing it or a system is doing it, what are the ingredients that we can agree on and say that most probably privacy will be preserved if we go this way? So one of the first principle is minimalism. Allow minimal access. Don't go with, okay, allow everything, and if the person is not meeting it, then secure it. You start with 0 is what you're allowed. And then I give you a little more permission, and then you a little more permission. Also, we know that patient data stands in silos, and ABDM is one initiative of the National Health Authority and Government of India, where we are trying to integrate everything, standard-based interoperability. But can we do something? And we in this age of AI, where everybody wants to do something in AI, and everybody wants to leverage the power of AI or beauty of AI or whatever, efficiency of AI, how do we get that data, which is lying in a hospital, allow it for analytics, as maybe in AI, but ensure that the privacy remains? And yes, the classical techniques of anonymization of data, etc., are anyway available, but we know that it's that difficult. Simple example, working with one of the hospital, we're trying to see how much anonymization is possible. It turned out that in one of the standard called DICOM, which is used in radiology and waveform generation, is a standard where you can have radiology image in a file, and then you can even communicate with several systems like radiology system, PACS systems, etc. In those images, although DICOM standard provides for a mechanism, what is called overlay. Have you ever seen an X-ray slide? If you just, the doctors that put it, on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, at the bottom, there are some things already printed on the image. The standard provides for an overlay mechanism. It is possible to keep the image very clean, and the overlay can be retained in a different section. At the time of visualization, they can be merged together and you can see it. But in reality, no system does it. They all actually burn the information in the image. How do you anonymize that? Because if the whole strategy of anonymization was stamp out the overlay information on DICOM file and transmit it, it's gone. Because there is no use of stamping out that overlay layer. It's now burnt in the very JPEG that is being carried in the DICOM file. Now, no matter where it goes, all information of the patient is already there. So how do you arrive at anonymization, and is it really achievable? So those kind of questions, and we looked at 3 approaches. Can you can you do data analysis on features rather than whole image? So if I really want, say, head and neck cancer is what we were working on, head and neck cancer, do we really need the whole image, or can we just look at the tumor section? Can we take the help of AI systems to generate the tumor section out of those images and then run our entire AI routine on it, leave the data outside? The second is, can we move the model to the data? So this big data principle which says don't move the data, move the algorithm near the data. So can we move the AI to the data rather than bring data to the AI systems? That is one. And finally, can you do computation and encrypted data? Can I just encrypt it and then run to multi-party computation? You can do federated learning and so on and so forth. Obviously, there are AI frameworks which are aware of privacy. So there is TensorFlow privacy and OpenMind and PySwift. And these things are available. So what we did is we embarked on developing a system called PPDL, Privacy Preserving Distributed Learning. And what we did is we took three hospitals. One was Maastricht in Netherlands, Tata Memorial Center in Mumbai, and HCG in Bangalore. We asked them to create cohorts for the same set of problems. So we targeted head and neck cancer and said each hospital creates a cohort of its own patients, but leave the data at your end. And we will build a system where the algorithm will travel to each of these hospitals, do the analytics there, and then we'll bring it to a central server in CDAC, only the result of the learning, not the model, not the data, just the result of what it learned. And we will integrate it learning together and see whether it got worse or it got better. What we found out that the result was exactly same if we would have got all the three cohorts in one place and ran the model. So it is possible to do privacy preserving AI without actually moving data out of that hospital and it being totally untouched by human. The entire system will require that somebody vets the AI model, because you don't want an external code to arrive at the system and start creating havoc, because that's how you get hacked in the first place. So you require some agency which will vet the model, which will do the cohort homogenization, etc. And this works. Recently, my team at NRCS was asked by Ministry of Health, the eHealth division, to see if we can come up with a framework for all of the country, all health system in the country, to be covered under ISO 27002. And the first thing that we looked at is how generic or how specific is ISO. I know that ISO 27001 and 27002 are used across the information system band, but can it be even applied in health? So we came to know that if you look at the standard, these are basically in 4 categories. The standard talks about organizational control, people control, physical, and technology. And in each of them, it provides a lot of control. If you see, people control are only 8, but organization has 37 and technology is 34. They are the biggest challenge work where we need a lot of action to be done. And there are 5 attributes to each of these control type. There's a type, the information security, concept, capability, and security. If you are to break this down into various aspects of technology and look at it, it basically comes into 4 aspects. One of them is risk management. What are the risks? Identify them, have a mitigation plan for them, recover from them, etc., etc. The other one is access control. Like I said, it's turning out to be one of the most important aspects, access control. The second one being asset management. Who all have access to the physical system, and even data, who all have access to data. And also ultimately incident response. If something happens, what do you do with it? In fact, in the health informatics, there is a specific application of 27001 and 27002, which is a special ISO standard called 27799, which is essentially taking 27002 and applying it as is into health domain with what should be covered where. And it talks about 3 specific areas of action. It talks about a comprehensive guidance. It says, how do you go about applying 270000 set of standards. It talks about how do you align with the industry practice, and it talks about what is your risk-based approach. And this is what, looking at that, we have started working on. And this is work in progress between my division and the eHealth division of Ministry of Health, where we are trying to develop an ISMS which is broad-based, but can be applied to different type of setting based on applicability matrix. Now, applicability matrix is not there in either ISO 270012 nor it is in 27799. So we had to develop it on our own, because if you look at ISMS, it's usually 300-page document. An institution will have it. They'll have around 4 or 5 policy documents, which will again 50 pages each. So you're talking about close to 500 pages of document which is supposed to be implemented, and it have a lot of templates, a lot of sheets that you'll have to generate. Ultimately, when your dossier becomes there and it goes to your CISO or NISO, they are looking at close to 1,000 pages of document that they have to keep track of. So we thought that this is, if we are talking about 1,000-page document to be given to a clinician, it will never fly. If we have to give it to a taluk hospital, if we have to give it to a PHC, if we have to give it to a hospital like AIMS, there has to be an applicability difference. Also, what about the institution and where the data is kept? So if my data is in my laptop, my data is in my mobile phone, my data is in my own server, in my own premises, all the way, what if my data is in Amazon? And if you look at the same standard from these different views, you arrive at the applicability metrics which we have designed. Of course, it is still work in progress, and it will be, I think, another 3 to 6 month time before a public consultation on it starts. But that's what we are working on. And the idea is that it will be not only something that you can take as a person, how to implement it simply and easily, because we'll provide most of the templates pre-written for you and you have to just fill it and track it. But the auditability is the perspective. We should be, if a clinician tomorrow says that, yes, I'm ISMS compliant for the clinician side of it, then we should be able to audit it. And the same for each level of the institution. So the entire health chain structure of health data flow need to be covered as well as need to be auditable. So this is what we are working on. That's why I said that when I got a call, an email from Arvind saying that you need to come and talk about it, I said, wow. So I got my first set of ears pre-made for me. So this is what, and we are hopeful that this is going to simplify a lot of things, bring in the good practices and the right kind of approaches, because it's one thing to know that there is a standard and then these set of people do it, but make it into an implementable set of documents, templates, etc., which anybody, like I said, right from clinician all the way to super specialty hospitals and the service providers like Amazon or Practo or whatever you can name. We maintain a single point of contact, so if anything related to standards in health, including terminology or anything, if you have a system which you're trying to get compliant to NABH as well as digital health standard, or to M1, M2, M3, and now M4, M5 of the National Health Authority, ABDM, we are your free support. So you can just drop a mail at there and my team will get in touch with you. We do everything. You can go to nrcs.in website and you can see all the information. And you can always write to me if you want a patient set of ears. Thank you very much.